Plunder Patrol Runic. Ah, man, that's a deck that I haven't got the chance to hear much out of this format. Don't beg 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. Super Heavy Samurai. That's what you want to hear, right? And Kashtira. Both of these decks actually decided that they wanted to battle it out here for the top cut of this event, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm very happy to see that, you know, we have these two titans, you know, taking each other out and actually showcasing that, hey, you know, like, we can do things out here for this metagame, and I think that that's actually pretty cool. Winning the event, though, was Super Heavy Samurai. Super Heavy ended up, you know, kind of rounding out a majority of the competition, which is fine. I mean, once you kind of see the deck get its generic snowball effect going, it's pretty good. So, out of those standard top contenders doing their thing in large numbers, we also had Branded out here. Yeah, I mean, I've heard there have been so many arguments between branded players this format, like, oh, do I want to play the Lulu Wall? Do you need to play Nadir Servant? Whichever build ends up being successful, I think is going to ultimately come down to player preference and just what players can bring to the table. But alas, it's definitely there. And then, of course, we had Purely in the top cut. A lot of innovations out here, Purely. Some builds trying slightly heavier Dark World packages. Other builds opting for Shaddoll. Volcanic Shell has had no chance for love out here, which is actually kind of interesting to me that you haven't seen, you know, any turnover rate for that. And then we had Rika Plants. Yes, Rika actually showcasing that the deck can do something, and that was actually wild. And then Plunder Patrol Runic out here by Hunter Lloyd. That's a name that you actually see quite a lot be successful out here out of the Florida region. And, you know, Sailing the Seas with Plunder Runic being like one of the only Plunder variants out here to actually have done something, I actually think is really nice. All right, let's pass on over so you can take a look at Top Cut. All right, winning our event here is none other than Super Heavy Samurai. Yeah. You know, I'll be honest with you, as we've kind of seen Super Heavy Samurai continue to develop and be like, you know, one of the most possibly solved decks in the history of the game in terms of ratios. You know, playing the one kaiju, you know, you got your hand traps wrapped up and then you just kind of drop Regulus on it. The best innovation that you get from this deck actually comes from the side. This build actually opting for Spell Canceller here and Abyssal, and we're actually side decking the Saruja as well. I have not seen hardly anybody giving consideration to Saruja out here. That actually kind of opens up the door to kind of interesting ideas. I like the fact that Saruja gives you turbo draw power, as well as, you know, the free ability to special summon a monster from your hand. And once you kind of set up and capitalize on that relatively strong effect, it's good. Also, sculpting for as many hand traps as you could. That's kind of disgusting at the end of the day. So, all right, next up here we have Kashtira. You know, I'm not surprised to see that Kashtira got second and third place, honestly. This build did opt for the Shifter and Drawn Lockbird. We have seen a huge presence in both of these cards returning back to Kashtira's main deck, because both of these cards cover so much ground in the modern era format. And, you know, if you're closing out games with just the activation of one of these, it's so good. And then, of course, we have Kaijus for defensive options. So if you're really worried about your opponent putting up something that your deck can't actually handle, well, you can just go ahead and deploy a Kaiju over it. Problem solved at the end of the day. I do see that we are playing Gammas in here as well. I mean, you're pretty hand-trapped up. And then, of course, like the Kaijus. And then, of course, I see that we are citing Thrust and Talents down here. And we're actually side-decking Skill Drain. I have not seen this deck try this one yet, but this does open up some pretty cool defensive play options. Skill Drain against Super Heavy Samurai should literally be game. Next up here we have there's a lot to really talk about here. So we are playing Maximus for a special summon to drop something from the extra deck so we could get a search. That's kind of cool. We're using this as a good old fusion sub target so that we can cheese out this good card, which is kind of interesting. Okay. let's be honest here. This is one of the more teched out versions I've seen. This is where you see like the one blazing Cartesia kind of show up. And this build is also opting for cross-out designators so that you can very, very heavily play the game. And of course, you do see the Nadir Servants in here as well, trying to give this deck a round out for, you know, the chance to play the game. I see that we're also playing Fusion Duplication in here as well. This is pretty cool. I like when you can see very teched out decks like this actually working. Good stuff. Next up here, we had our Purely list. Okay, so this is one of the first Rainbow Bridge of Salvation builds that I've actually seen in the TCG. Big thing with this is like, you can resolve this and get your search, and then Droll usually just ends your turn. That's kind of been like the biggest disappointment that I've really seen with this right now, is the fact that you have to get this off in order to get like the chicken nugget extensions going. But typically it can work itself out. I've just been a little bit more issues as of late than we've really wanted to deal with here. We are playing the one Herald of the Abyss so that we can actually out the big Purely monster if need be. And then we are playing good old Where Art Thou. This is one of the tech choices that a lot more people were considering, but I have not seen this take off at all. This is the first build that I've seen actually doing this, and then we are citing the Exceed Encores so that we can actually out the big cat. Outside of that, I see nothing else too out of left field. This deck has been pretty much figured out depending on how you want to go about things. Next up is our other super heavy Samurai deck, and to be perfectly honest with you, 41 cards is very daring today. We did opt for what I feel like is the Spell Canceller in the main deck as like the offshoot, because that way, you know, you can go make the Genius, deploy the Spell Canceller. Congratulations, you've done your job. And then you're very hand trapped up in here with 15 of them, and then actually more than that, you are on 18 hand traps in here. You do notice that a lot of these builds just stick to the one Regulus. I know a few people try to get a little bit more spicy in terms of, you know, do I want to opt for more copies of these? But I've noticed the one has been your pretty big go-to for all of these lists. Outside of that, you have Kaijus down here on the side. There is none in the main deck, and they just felt that this was going to be a better call. And I think that that's actually very doable at the end of the day. So overall, good stuff. Next up here, we have our Plunder Patrol Runic at 54 cards in the main deck. Come on, man. Like, I understand that you have to have a lot of cards in order to play the game here. You are going to notice that, yes, we are playing the Rite of Armesia package in here, because once again, you need to be able to set up and be able to start to play the game. And if you cannot play the game, unfortunately, you're going to have a bad time out here. So you're going to have to rely on standard combo from this. You're going to have to rely on the backing of this, and you're going to have to rely on the draw power of this. It's not to say that like this deck is in a bad position right now, but it feels like you have to play a lot more power cards in order to just get the same results that you might have been able to get in other formats. And that's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. It just proves that, you know, the format has taken one step further down power creep, and, you know, a deck like this has to step its game up in order to kind of counteract the existing meta. But I like what we're seeing here. It does definitely prove that all three engines coming together allows this deck the actual chance to keep up. All right. Also, Rivalry is pretty good card still. Next up here, we have our Rika Sun Avalon deck. We got a lot of tech choices in here. So we are playing the one Spider Orchard, not actually in the side deck. That's kind of cool. We are playing the Rose Lover in the main deck. Okay, that's kind of cool. I see we are doing Jasmine for little extension plays. We are also opting for the one Cactus Bouncer. Trust me when I say this, if you actually see this card touch down on the field, you're going to have a pretty bad time, because believe it or not, 1,800 attack points is not easy to deal with. We are also main decking the Rose Whip. A lot of the cards that you're used to seeing in the side deck as like tech choices from a lot of the other builds are in the main deck here. I'll see that we did opt for the Spiritual Water Owie so that you can actually hand rip your opponent. And we're actually siding triple copies of Polynosis down here as well. So this build took the former tech choices a lot of people had seen. We went ahead and we moved them to the main deck. That way we can kind of start to counteract a lot of the other stuff that's, you know, being an issue. And then we further side in good power cards like this so we can play the game. I like this build a lot. This is what you really want to see out here in terms of developments. So good stuff. So what do you guys think about this breakdown? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I will see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.